Bless all the paths our feet walk to be free. Bless all the paths our feet walk to be free.
So when I was in college, I was about 19 years old. It was when the protests of the Vietnam War were going on. And there was a protest, peaceful demonstration going to be happening on the main street of the college town. And I ran across campus and down this hill to get to participate in this march. And the way that it worked was, here's the main street of the town. Here's the college campus, Penn State, and the campus kind of sloped down a hill, and then there was a wall, and in certain places along the wall there were trees and underbrush and whatnot. So my route took me down that hill and through some trees, and when I got to the wall and I jumped down the wall onto the sidewalk, I looked, and to my left, coming in this direction, not too far away, were all the students and the peaceful marching protesters. And to my right, coming this way, were soldiers in full combat regalia. And I was stunned, and I stood there for a moment. Something had put me right smack in the middle, and all I remember about the rest of the day was that I burst into tears, and that's it. I have no memory of the rest of the day. So when I was thinking about what to share with you all this morning, that memory came up, because on this day, it was a Sunday morning, and it was the holiest week of the Jewish year, and thousands and thousands of people are coming to Jerusalem to celebrate Passover. And two very different processions are heading to the city this morning. From a little village called Bethany, about 2 miles east of Jerusalem, Jesus, the great master teacher and healer, and many of his followers are riding in. And from the west come Pontius Pilate and the Roman soldiers, the imperial troops. From the east, we have a man dressed like a simple shepherd, mounted on a humble donkey, and yet surrounded with great joy and devotion and celebration, coming towards the city. And then over here we have the Roman centurions who are dressed in all their very impressive military attire. You just see the sunlight glinting off all that armor and all those weapons. On this side of the city, the people are happily singing and shouting, and they've cut branches and laid them across the road. They've even laid their own coats across the road in reverence for this man that they love so much. And over on this side of the city, first comes the cavalry, and then the foot soldiers, and all you hear is that heavy, thundering footfalls of the horses and the men who are feared so much. So yes, the Romans are entering the city through one gate with all the symbols of their power, but it's an outward power. It's an outer power. It's that kind of force that's needed to dominate in the world. It's the kind of power over others that makes others do what you want because they're afraid of you. And coming in through a very different gate, Jesus enters the city, and he's all about that inner power. He's all about that inner power, a power that he first cultivated within himself by overcoming his own fears, his own self-doubt, his small self. And then through his practice, his meditation, his prayer, his work, and through grace, that power became a power that it could heal, it could uplift, it could work miracles. It was a true transformative power, an alchemical power. And of course I'm talking about the power of love. Power of love and vulnerability. Because love and vulnerability always go together. You can't seem to have one without the other, like it or not. Jesus certainly looks pretty vulnerable riding in on a little donkey. So why do love and vulnerability go together? And I would say mostly we like it not, that this is true. Well, we know on the one hand that as soon as we start loving anything, we're vulnerable, because we know that at least in this world, whatever we love, we will lose. We will lose at least the physical expression or form of everything that we love. So we're vulnerable as soon as we open our hearts. Take a breath. And we're also, love and vulnerability go together because when we're vulnerable, it's like people can really see who we are. We're not hiding anything. And when they can see who we really are, then they can love who we really are. And it's much better to be loved for who you really are than for who they might think you are, or who you should be, or their idea or fantasy about you. And it's also because if we're vulnerable, then we can create the space for others to be vulnerable in our presence. And that's such a gift, isn't it? To be able to give someone else. That we can make it safe for them to show up too without their armor. So, one way of working with a myth, or a dream, or a personal experience even, is to see that every person in it is you, or a part of you. And so I'd like to invite you right now to just maybe see that whole scene that I laid out a minute ago. You've got the soldiers coming in over here, and you've got the followers of Jesus and Jesus walking in over here. And can you say inside your own mind, yes, I'm that follower in the crowd over there. I'm the follower, at least a part of me is a follower. A part of me is someone who looks for something outside of me to worship, something to follow, something to make me happy.
Please give it to me.
And that part of me, because it thinks that my happiness, my salvation can only come from outside of me, comes when the conditions out here change, that part of me, or those parts of me, they are always working to control, manage those outer conditions. So I call them my managers. And then there's these soldiers over here. And what are soldiers hired to do? They're hired to keep the peace, to keep order, to keep everything under control, make sure chaos doesn't happen. You know, soldiers are trained to be, here's a phrase from A Course in Miracles, suspicious at best and vicious at worst. It's pretty sad, isn't it, to think that a person or a part of me or you has actually been trained, programmed to not trust anybody, to never let that armor down, to be suspicious of everything at best, and vicious at worst. And then there are those in the crowd over here that Jesus had touched. So, you know, I'm them too. I'm the leper. I'm the blind one. I'm the deaf one. I'm the crippled one. I'm the adulteress. And those parts of me, before their encounter with the Christ energy, before they get that healing, they carry the unhealed past. They carry all the fear, the pain, the unworthiness. They carry all the stuff that my inner managers and my inner protectors work so hard to keep buried, to keep exiled. Get those lepers out of the city. So I call those parts of me my exiles. This is a terminology from the therapy system that I've been working with for a few years, internal family system, that we contain a huge cast of characters right in here. So also then, I'm Jesus. I am Jesus. And that means that that very same energy of Christ, that very same love, that very same powerful, transformative, alchemical love is in me too. I'm Jesus. And so are you. And how does that feel? You know, and you are Jesus too. That same Christ energy, that same alchemical power in each one of us. So what do we do to facilitate that when I show up somewhere, the Christ in me will be leading the procession? I don't have to get rid of any of the followers or the soldiers or the lepers or anything like that, but it would be nice if the self was leading my life, where the one whose voice would be the final voice on a decision, or the self is the one that can hear that impulse that says more from spirit, more towards love, more away from fear. The self, the Christ, is the one that goes, take this step now, go this direction now. And so it's not about getting rid of any of those other characters in my inner drama, in the psychodrama that goes on in here. It's not about getting rid of them, but it is about healing them. It is about healing them, and it's about liberating the soldiers from their need for armor and weapons. And it is about liberating the managers from having to work so hard to make my life fill in like all those little things in the planner that you're supposed to do, and you do them just right. It'd be nice to liberate those inner parts of me from having to work so hard and being so afraid of when something's not right. So how do we do that? I want to say that I can't give a talk without talking about emphasizing, underlining. It's our spiritual practice that is what's going to let our Christ self lead. So it's whatever we do that helps us really get in touch with that higher love within us, that power of love within us. So whether it's dancing or gardening, hopefully meditating and praying are in there, singing, chanting, making love. Do those things in which you really feel that power. You feel that upliftment into that energy. You know it when you feel it. You know it when you feel it. So fill your days, fill your lives. Make a commitment that your life will be filled with those activities that connect you to yourself. And then the healing part. The healing is of all those lepers inside and all those managers and protectors and soldiers. How do we approach that? For myself, I know that anytime I get upset now, anytime I get upset or triggered by anything, I will, first of all, just take a deep breath, step back, and it seems like the first thought that comes to my mind is, whoa, somebody in there really got triggered. So I've immediately separated myself, kind of stepped into self and separated from whatever the part was whose feelings are flooding me in that moment. But I just take a step back, take that breath. I'm like, oh, so it's like walking into a room and there's a little kid there and that kid is really, really upset. And you don't sit down and start having a temper tantrum with her, but you you have to acknowledge, oh my goodness, you are really upset. Something is really bothering you. And so you listen to what that is. And usually once you start listening to that, then there'll be a few other voices that start chiming in. Maybe for you, I know they do for me. And one of them is saying, you shouldn't feel this way. Here are all the reasons why you shouldn't feel this way. And that's got to be a manager. But then there'll be another voice over here somewhere that says, it's their fault. It's that person. If only they didn't do, if only he was different. We've got to just, if this part's got feel some power, it's got some anger, and it's like, let's do this. Oh, okay. So often, the whole, think of the word upset, it's like there's a lot going on inside. It's not just fear, it's not just anger, it's not just hurt. It's all of it. Every part's chiming in. And it takes time, and it takes a real willingness to be with yourself. To be with yourself and either think about it, write it down, talk to a friend, go to a therapist, but sort out. Because each of those parts of you deserve to be heard. They each have a story. They each carry burdens that they'd feel a lot better if they could let go of. And so would you. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I wanted to read a passage from Byron Katie. Oh, just the other piece of that, of how we heal and how we get more into self-energy is this practice of questioning our own beliefs, which I think is so pivotal, it's so foundational to realize that so much of what we think and believe is just what somebody else handed to us when we were too young to discriminate and know better. It's like nobody's going, no, sorry Mom, I'm 2 years old and nope, not going to take that one in. We didn't do that. We were that open slate. So you have a troubling thought, you step back and you ask yourself, okay, who believes this and why do you believe it? And is it really true? And is it really true? I love this. I have a quote somewhere from Don Miguel Ruiz. And he says, although I can't find the quote, he says that 95% of the things that we believe are lies. about that one. So here's a quote from Byron Katie. I found this just this morning, and I love it because it describes both the fruits of our spiritual practice and our willingness to grow and heal and evolve, and it describes a state of being that we've all experienced. Maybe we don't live there as consistently as someone like Byron Katie might. And it also reminds us that this is why we'll sit down and meditate for half an hour and feel like we just spent the whole time fighting one thought after another, or why we will go and get that healing when this one issue just doesn't go away. So she says, I sit with my eyes closed. 2 hours pass. Then it occurs to me that not a single thought has happened. I discover that tears of joy are running down my cheeks. I don't stop them, even though the joy seems bigger than I can contain. All that it is, all that it was, and ever should be, could be, is invited to live at its highest power now. It's all right if it kills me. It doesn't matter. I know not to stop it. I become so bright, so weightless, and lived so fearlessly, allowing that the joy can have its own full life through me. And as everything becomes visible, I see its true nature, which is love. Everything else is burned up as this joy has its way with me. I could kiss the ground. I could make love with the dirt, with the cement, the leaves, the soil, the texture of reality between fingers that can't even hold it. There's nothing to grasp, nothing that can be controlled. I notice that I'm worshiping, not with any words, but with palm of hand against cheek. Where will this love end? How could I possibly know? And eventually, the sobbing changes to the softest whisper, a breath, and then not even that. So in honor of that great master, teacher, and healer who on this morning rode a donkey, I'd like to finish with a poem. It's called, What Would You Do? So how do we know? How do we really know that Jesus walked on water? How do we know that he didn't dance? Or surf the Dead Sea to the ecstasy of all those fishes? Perhaps the apostles made up a little white lie because walking just seemed more dignified. But I wonder right now how the world would be different if instead of crosses in all those churches, there were scenes of smiling surfers and blissed out fishes. And instead of suffering saviors, we saw Jesus in the barrel. And what if all our sacred icons showed the saints dancing? And our images of divine love were Jesus in a tango. And I just have to ask you, if your feet were on that water, what would you do? Amen. Thank you very much.
Bless all